Alright, I am back with another First Descendant video. Last week was pretty scarce with videos because of the holiday and stuff. Today I am heading back to that game because that is essentially all I have been playing this time. I have been down on the game somewhat for various aspects, and yet I also played it for 30 hours this past week. Have gotten one max character, gotten mastery 11. I've done a lot of things, and even though, yes, I do play a lot of quote-unquote, bad looter shooters, I wouldn't be playing this if I didn't find something redeeming in it. And there are many aspects of it I like, but there's things that are still really annoying as time goes on. So I wanted to talk about my experience sort of after 1 week as opposed to 1 day, which is what I did with the first video I did. And, there's a good amount to go through, both positive and negative. First of all, I am having a good time with combat. I think that the guns here are well designed. I think they feel good. And the power kits that your different descendants have seem diverse enough to be interesting. It is a good pursuit to try and build new characters and see how they feel. So far, I've really enjoyed the 3 characters I have, Yessa, Bunny, and Freyna. Freyna's the one I just hit 40 with. And I'm pretty close on the other 2 now. This video is me doing bunny farming and quasi-leveling. But there are a few issues within this. One personal issue I'm having is latency and rubber banding, as you will probably see in this video. This has been happening almost since launch, and I cannot figure out how to fix it. It does not appear to be my internet. I've reset my internet many times. This is the only game this is happening for. I've looked it up, and some other people are having this problem, but if there is one thing affecting my enjoyment of this game more than anything, it is this technical issue. And if you have any advice for me, any at all, I would love to hear it and try it, because this is driving me crazy. The other thing is some aspects of character acquisition and leveling are not amazing. The most efficient way to level characters is to do this low-level defense mission in the first zone, where 4 of you will just sit around and essentially one-shot enemies for half an hour, because you can use your high-level weapons on a low-level character, so they're still strong to a certain extent, but if you want to get actual levels, you sort of just farm that infinitely until you get to 30, 35, 40, because you're going to generally want to be higher if you're doing the higher level farms later. It's not required, given that you can still use all the same gear, but that being the most efficient way to level is not great, and it's just sort of very boring. It's like turn your brain off boring. In a way, a lot of other stuff it's above and beyond even that. Some of the grinds I think are good. Some of the grinds I think are less good. I don't particularly enjoy the ones that are just running the local patrol missions. I think in general this game has relied way too heavily on the patrol mission format, where every zone is the same. You go to a base, you talk to a person, you got to complete 3 area missions, almost all of which are just clearing people out or taking over a zone. That's 90% of them, and then there's some random ones like a couple platforming segments, which are kind of annoying enough to begin with, and then doing it with rubber banding is borderline impossible. So those were sort of nightmares for me. It's just, those are fast farms, but they're very boring. A lot of the times you're just doing them for materials. I do not think the structure of this game being so reliant on that sort of patrol mission format is good. I think things improve a little bit once you get into the strikes. The strikes, I don't know what they're actually called. The strikes are longer. They have at least a couple objectives. You're usually running them with a team. Enemies are a little harder because they scale. Those are a bit more involved, which I can appreciate. The biggest problem with strikes is that inevitably you will come to a final boss that has some sort of 3-ball immunity mechanic. If not, I've seen them get up to 5 balls now, where essentially every boss in the game has this stupid mechanic, and it just gets, they're like, okay, well, do we need different mechanics? No, we're going to do more annoying things with the balls. There's 5 balls and only one is not immune at a time, or there's 3 balls and you have to destroy them in a specific order with 4 players who aren't paying attention, and they will always reset forever if you don't do that. So there is a huge lack of creativity in those. This is as opposed to the Colossi missions, which I've mostly been very impressed with. Granted, I am only up to Devourer now. I just beat Dead Bride. That was a weird one because it was much, much easier to solo because of scaling as opposed to doing it with a team, which needed way more DPS, which the team often did not have. But those are well-designed fights with actual mechanics and strategies and tactics as opposed to 3-ball immunity. I do know that the Colossi thing gets problematic later on because there are more involved mechanics. It's not just like, you know, dying to big damage or whatever. There's actual mechanics, there's wipe conditions, and you are almost always playing these with a group of random people on no mic. Like, this isn't, you're not doing Destiny LFG, you got to be in some sort of Discord or something to get a real team for this, or you got to have friends playing, and trying to execute some of these mechanics that require, you know, a little bit more complication is extremely difficult, if not impossible, with some of these teams. So I know a lot of people are running into trouble with that, and we'll see. I've heard Pyromancer is a pretty big wall. I don't know exactly what the deal is, but I think it has something to do with that. So I'm not terribly looking forward to that. Things I've started to not really care about as much. I think it's annoying that they sell so much stuff and so much power and so many characters as microtransactions, but like, if you just sort of turn your brain off and pretend that doesn't exist, grinding for stuff is long, I guess, but it does feel very satisfying once you actually get it done. It can be exhausting running the same missions over and over, but that's also looters. You can't complain about that too much. So picking something specific to go for, whether it's a character or a weapon or an upgrade material or whatever, that seems gratifying when those things drop. It's like really, you know, that dopamine hit is there. I also especially like getting world drops that I'm not expecting. I've gotten some cool, you know, ultimate rarity stuff from there, a couple red rarity things, whatever it's called. So there is some excitement to looting here in a way that I think is promising. I think this game does not lack in stuff to do. There is always some sort of grind you can be pursuing in some form or another, and you can sort of just alternate. Like, it can be very repetitive if you're just going for one thing all of the time, you know, nonstop. But if you want to just take a break and mix it up and go farm something else for a while, it's very easy to do that. I think as time goes on, this may get more annoying as you're like, I'm going to farm the ultimate thing with a 3% drop rate in this 20-minute strike or whatever it is. So that I can see getting a lot more annoying as time goes on. But for now, I don't believe the 20% drop rate for some of these things is accurate. Almost everyone I've talked to has like never gotten those pieces that are in the strikes at 20% in a way that makes sense. So, but even that, it's, you know, 10, 15 times, it's annoying, but it's doable, and it felt good when I got the new character, leveled her up. And another thing I really like is build crafting, and this idea that you really can feel power increases the more you play, the more you can get currency to upgrade, the more you upgrade your module space. I know that this is literally just ripped out of Warframe, but it works in Warframe for a reason, and I think it works here too. This is where sort of real strategy comes in. And even though your powers are not that modifiable, you know, there are some really, really rare mods and stuff you can get to change things. The way you kind of power up here is something that I find satisfying, and that I can really feel my characters progressing. And now even at level 40, there are still more paths forward to increase your power from there with more modules you can equip and stuff. That grind for those materials seems not amazing. I know there's these vaults and things you have to collect materials from that are not good, and they will eat your materials if you don't do things perfectly. But I'm leaving those alone for now. I just used the free one that I got at the end of the main quest line. The story is, I don't know, it's fine. Find these 3 objects, get power, try and kill the enemy races. It's not like it's hard to follow, it seems pretty basic to me. And you're just constantly jumping from character to character in each new zone with very few repeating. It feels like they're just introducing these characters to be like, here's the next person you're going to grind for in anywhere from 1 hour to a month. And like, there's no real through lines with a lot of these. I'm doing some sort of story quest for Bunny right now, which unlocks journal entries, but like, you know, it's the characters are more about like how cool they look or how hot they are or whatever. I haven't really found a lot of investment in these characters or NPCs yet, and you just sort of talk to them and then move on to the next batch, and there's relatively little overlap here. There's this guy who's like just this giant asshole the whole time, and then he eventually becomes a traitor, and you're like, that's it? That there was no twist? He just was acting like an asshole and a traitor the whole time, and he was a traitor? Like, okay, well, that's pretty straightforward, but sure. So ultimately, I am enjoying my time. I am running into some issues with tech problems. I do think large chunks of the game are pretty dull in terms of the patrol missions and the ridiculously repetitive orb bosses. You can't really have advanced mechanics for some of these bosses or things if you don't have any real coherent way to communicate with your teammates most of the time. This seems harder than in other games, as almost no one is using a mic, and the mechanics are not remotely explained in the game. Like, you have to just Google essentially whatever's going on, because, you know, unlike other games where it's like trial and error, you'll figure this, like, there's no, you know, there's not a way to do this with a lot of these mechanics, which is pretty frustrating. But yeah, so I'm continuing to play. I'm grinding out characters and whatever. I have some free time between Destiny acts or whatever, but Destiny is also not that much of a time commitment these days, so I feel like I'll be playing this for a decent amount of time. I almost just kind of threw in the towel initially there after a couple of days, but I pressed forward, and I'm glad I did. We'll see if Nexon fixes some of the more annoying aspects of this. If you can just ignore the microtransactions almost completely, I would just consider doing that, as just buying these characters outright feels weird. I'm okay buying cosmetics. You know, I might buy a Freyna cosmetic because that's just cosmetic. That's a pretty standard thing in these types of games, but all this other buying power stuff, buying characters, I don't really like that. Even if it's like Warframe, I don't care. Like, Warframe does not have great microtransactions either, so not really a paragon of excellence there. But yeah, so I like it. I dig it. Despite some issues I have and negative things I'm writing about it, because they're, you know, welcome to Destiny, where I have 1,000 negative articles about a game I put 4,000 hours into. It's just how it goes here. And I'm not seeing any just like, this is a horrible miss, like it was very obvious with Suicide Squad right away. Like, I don't think this is in that category, and I can see a way to this doing well. It started off very strong with its player count. Being free to play obviously helps with that. And we'll see what sort of the long-term future is for the First Descendant. I'm always calling it the Last Descendant. Probably should stop doing that. Did I call it that at the beginning? I don't remember. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.